Thank you so very much. And thank you, Lawrence, for inviting me to be the keynote speaker this afternoon. Thank you, Kumar. It was very interesting listening to you and your opening comments. It's indeed my pleasure to be at the Retail Association of India L&D Summit. I did not quite realize this is the first time we are doing a L&D Summit, and it's indeed my honor and privilege to be a keynote speaker today. I hope everyone is staying safe, and our colleagues in the retail industry, who I consider frontline workers, as much as the healthcare workers, are also feeling safe. I so much wish vaccines get rolled out to this young workforce really soon. It's actually surreal to be on a virtual RAI conference, as each year this is such a well-attended, networked event. However, I'm glad to see the quality of subjects and speakers as good as it ever was. And there are several speakers who I personally know of, and I would pay anything to just listen to them. Coming to the topic itself, in terms of reimagining talent transformations. What a year to think of talent transformations, especially that of L&D. I would safely say that this is probably the best time to be the CHRO of a company that thinks long-term and wants to solve complex business problems. It's probably in the last 7 to 8 years of my somewhat long HR career that Hugo introduced me as, that I'm seeing evidence that HR is providing solutions to some of the hardest business problems and not being a fringe player. If someone had told me around this time in 2020 that the world will turn upside down starting March, I would have certainly questioned that person's mental balance. None of us have seen anything like this in our lives. It started a year ago, and we don't know when it's going to end. This said, 2020 helped us learn the real meaning of being agile, the concept that Kumar also alluded to. For years, companies have been talking about agile methodology practices, such as flattening organizations, ability to collaborate remotely, and working in teams. This year, Agile happened at scale. Several friends of mine who are big HR leaders tell me their companies moved faster than they thought was ever possible. Things like digital transformation and redesign of performance management happened in just a few months. We learned that a focus on helping employees to be productive, safe, and included in care was all about transformation. Talking of learning and development, personally, I relearned how to learn. This year showed me that HR professionals are learners at heart. In fact, the L&D function reinvented itself so much and has helped HR and business managers manage this complexity with growth. Personally, I've seen more consumption of virtual learning than I have ever seen in my career and ever thought was possible. And the best thing is our employees are as engaged as they have ever been. While I had talked about this for long, I really did not know how much public health, viruses, workplace hygiene, or global social issues such as Black Lives Matter are really concerning us. But this year, we learned about all of these. Gaps in leadership competencies are perceived, for example, in areas such as change leadership or innovative thinking. To close these gaps, strengthening the internal talent pipeline through holistic, highly professional talent management, as well as recruiting external top performance, top performers is widely considered a promising way of bringing fresh thinking and experience in the industry. Let me also talk a few minutes about some emerging trends. The virus made sure that in 2020, several companies had to shed headcount and lay off employees. However, in my mind, the whole gamut of talent, including talent acquisition, training, leadership development, succession planning, and long-range HR planning remains one of the most complex parts of HR. In 2021, companies will begin to put more emphasis on job sharing and internal talent mobility. I also see gig working finally opening up in India, what with several young workers not willing to put all their eggs in one basket. One of the mentees that I'm mentoring asked me why she cannot professionally pursue weekend singing at a local band, even as she works as an HR manager during the week. And I don't know why she can't. She probably should. Digital transformation that began a few years ago and picked up in 2020 is certainly here to stay. I do not believe there is any more reason to believe that those roles which can be performed from home cannot be done so even after the pandemic ends. Several of my colleagues are now working from everywhere. Of course, much of retail and most of aviation roles need to be performed from where the customer needs it. In fact, the big trend for me is work comes to you rather than you going to work. In HR, this translates to how to double down on digital work experience by way of simplification, integration, and design thinking. Products like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, etc., are sweeping across the world, enabling HR teams to create a single platform experience for employees. Sadly, we now have to play a game of catch up. I'm talking about HR function, because all other business functions, including production, operations, marketing, finance, and supply chain, got here long time ago and had shifted to a more innovative and tech-savvy business model. One of my goals as the Chief Human Resource Officer of IndiGo is to make the HR function here become more scientific. What do I mean by this? My colleagues and I are nowadays constantly discussing on what experiments we can carry out in the function for it to solve the most difficult business problems. It's not about using HR buzzwords, but going behind the hard business problems and solving them. For example, it's a well-known fact that globally the airline industry will face severe shortage of trained pilots in the years to come, although some of them have excess of it today. So how can we be ahead of the curve and do things today that will bear fruit 3 to 4 years from now? More importantly, are we working at those things that need to be done now, but have long range and have long-term impacts? While doing this, my team and I are constantly checking ourselves against these goals so we can make short-term corrections. My long-term goal will stay firm, but I'm more than happy to make short-term redefinitions. In short, I'm flexible with the details, but firm on the vision. This means that my team and I are on course to developing ourselves to be the most scientific function and that can be treated than simply traditional and administrative. So what's the difference between a traditional HR mindset and that of being scientific? While there are several traditions that need to be kept up, sadly, traditional HR functions have relied heavily on the use of past practices. Although these past practices probably once reflected the most effective approach, they are probably still used even though the business environment, the technology, and even the workforce assumptions under which they were once created have changed dramatically. In contrast, HR experiments assume continuous change, so it uses data and facts to shift towards the latest, most effective HR approaches continually. While working at Amazon, we always said we manage HR as a business. So rather than simply aligning with business goals, continuing with the previous question, the scientific model focuses on HR actions and resources so that they produce the maximum direct measurable impact on business results. The two primary areas where HR can traditionally produce the highest business impacts include increasing the productivity of the workforce and improving volume and speed of product and process innovation. Under this approach, HR focuses on solving broad strategic problems like how do you manage decreased sales? How do we work on product development or missed deadlines, rather than on technical HR problems or tactical HR problems? And finally, under this model, HR problems and results are converted to their monetary impact on revenue. For example, retention efforts on salespeople allowed us to maintain $25 million in sales revenue or something like that. Reporting results in revenue impacting currency allows executives to quickly compare HR impacts from those of other key functions. Another area for HR, especially the L&D professionals, to focus on is culture. I believe that culture is a very important component for us here at IndiGo. We have been a very successful company at building a young organization, ground up, from just about 15 years ago, much of what has never been done before in the airline industry. That allowed us to invent everything from being on time to providing low fares and supporting hassle-free customer experience. Because we have so much innovation and experimentation going on at any one point of time, it feels like we are a network of 100 startups. And we love that. But it also creates the challenge of keeping that consistent culture that has made us successful. As we grow, we have to be mindful of not losing sight of what made us successful in the first place. I strongly believe that HR should rely on data-driven decision-making rather than only on relying on past practices or intuition. And one of the important components is HR technology. HR technology that is based on facets of artificial intelligence and machine learning. As it pertains to recruiting, the differentiator on AI-based recruiting is how do we figure out biased decisions that machines make? You know what I mean? After all, machine learning-based artificial intelligence relies heavily on what these machines learn, and the inputs to these learnings come from past data that has heavy human bias. To be able to figure out what these inputs are that derive the outputs is actually key. Unless we do this now, future will tell how HR professionals failed in teaching machines to be unbiased. I can go on, but being mindful of time and coming to some few quick takeaways for me. From a people standpoint, and I know we have CEOs joining this meeting as well. Briefly for me, I would list down maybe about 4 or 5 of them. Firstly, I would say trust your people to no end, but always look for evidence and data. Know your people well enough, but never make decisions based on just your relationships. I also think, and I learned this in Amazon, you don't have to make 100 decisions a day, but the handful decisions you make better be high impact ones. Again, at Amazon, I learned the art of being wicked smart, a term that we often use for thinking beyond the obvious, thinking on behalf of our customers and for the long term. With that, I wish the Reimagining Talent Transformation Conference all the very best and success. I look forward to attending 1 or 2 sessions myself. Again, thanks for the opportunity, Lawrence, and to Kumar.